Puss in Boots. Maybe it's time to move on. Satoshi and Mitsue looked at each other. The two had been protecting the movie theater that Satoshi's father had started. But for the past 10 years, it had been in the red, and finally, it couldn't afford to buy the next new movie. A real estate salesman had been asking many times if they could turn the theater into an apartment building. A few days after the closure notice was put up in front of the theater, a man named Tanabe from the city hall's child welfare department came to visit. Tanabe began by asking, "Could you lend me some old children's films? I can lend them every Saturday." And then, they say people are turning away from movies. But that's just because movie theaters haven't changed with the times. There must still be a lot of kids who want to watch movies. So we want to do a tour of old children's movies at dozens of community centers and elementary school gyms and halls in the city. If possible, we'd appreciate your help. Satoshi accepted the offer, thinking that if the hundreds of films his father had collected could be put to good use, his passion for movies, which had seemed to have shrunk, began to grow again. The movie theater would go out of business, but if he could be involved in movies in this way. But even so, they had been in the red for the past 10 years, and they were worried about whether it would work out. So, on the Saturday morning of the first tour, Satoshi and Mitsue loaded 3 children's movies into their car and headed to the Civic Hall. The 3 were Disney, Puss in Boots, and Doraemon. All of them were old films that had been released many years ago. Among them, Puss in Boots, 1969, was more than 30 years old. But both Satoshi and Mitsue loved this film. It is a story about a poor young man who is given courage and hope by a cat, who fights bravely, overcomes many trials, and marries a princess. In fact, the much-talked-about director Hayao Miyazaki was one of the staff members of Puss in Boots, which the two saw at the cinema when they were 10 years old. The admission fee for the tour was free for accompanying adults and 1,000 yen for children only. The city distributed flyers to nearby elementary schools. I wonder, while hoping for a good show, Satoshi and Mitsue continued to make preparations, with the feeling that it might not work after all. Then, it was 1 p.m., the time for the show to start. There was a lot of excitement. It was quite noisy. The hall, which can hold 2,000 people, was filled to capacity. Despite this, after deducting the cost of using the hall and distributing flyers, Satoshi and Mitsue only had a few tens of thousands of yen left. If they considered the costs of managing all the film and equipment from now on, they might not have much left. But the two decided to continue with the touring performances, because children today are moved by Puss in Boots, which had moved them so much 30 years ago, and because they believe that even though times have changed, at their core, children's feelings are the same now as they were in the past.